Have you ever wondered if a single kiss could pull someone back from death's door? What if I told you that in a dusty frontier town, a dying man's last desperate act didn't just save his life, but revealed a secret so dangerous that an entire community would turn against the woman who held it? This is the story of Elijah Crane, a cowboy with hours left to live, and Vera Ashworth, a widow whose touch carried either salvation or damnation, and how one impossible moment between them shattered everything the town of Copper Ridge thought they knew about life, death, and the thin line between them. Before we dive into the story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more shocking stories tomorrow. Also, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let's continue with the story. Elijah Crane stumbled out of the saloon, blood spreading across his chest like spilled wine. A card game had gone wrong, and now a bullet sat lodged near his heart. The town doctor rushed over, examined the wound, and shook his head. "Nothing I can do. He's got an hour, maybe two." The crowd gathered to watch him die. That's what people did in Copper Ridge. But through his fading vision, Elijah saw her standing at the edge of the crowd, Vera Ashworth, the widow in black who'd buried 3 husbands in 5 years. Everyone knew her name. Everyone avoided her like death itself. Something in her face called to him. Not pity, but recognition. Like she understood what it meant to stand on the edge of nothing. "You," he gasped, reaching toward her. "Come here." The crowd fell silent. Vera hesitated, then stepped forward, her black dress rustling. She knelt beside him. "You should save your strength." But Elijah was past saving. With the last of his fading strength, he pulled her down and kissed her. Their lips met in a desperate connection that tasted of copper and dying light. The crowd gasped. Someone screamed. Then something impossible happened. The pain in Elijah's chest vanished. His breathing steadied. Strength flooded back into his limbs. He sat up, pulled back his blood-soaked shirt, and found nothing but smooth skin and a thin white scar where the bullet hole should have been. Dr. Hutchins grabbed his shoulder, fingers pressing where the wound had been moments before. "This isn't possible! I saw it! Witchcraft!" someone hissed. All eyes turned to Vera. The widows cursed him. Elijah looked at her and saw pure terror in her eyes. Her hand trembled against her mouth. This wasn't triumph. This was fear. "What did you do?" he asked. Vera backed away from the crowd. "Stay away from me! All of you, stay away!" She turned and ran toward the outskirts of town, her dress billowing behind her. Elijah stood on legs that should have been too weak to hold him. The crowd pressed closer with questions and accusations, but he pushed through them. He'd been dying, and now he wasn't. Vera had done something impossible, and he needed answers. He started running, following her trail through the dust. Behind him, whispers grew into shouts, but he didn't stop. Whatever had just happened wasn't finished. It was only beginning. Vera's cabin sat at the edge of town where the desert began its endless stretch. She slammed the door and leaned against it, heart pounding. Her hands shook, and she could still taste him on her lips. She'd done it again. Pulled death out of someone and absorbed it into herself. Except this time, the man survived. That terrified her more than anything. Heavy footsteps approached, then pounding on the door. "Open up," Elijah called out, his voice strong and alive. "We need to talk." "Go away." Vera pressed her forehead against the wood. "Please." "Not happening. You did something to me." "I deserve to know what." "You don't want to know. Trust me." The pounding stopped. Then she heard him settle on her porch. "Then I'll wait right here, seeing as how I was supposed to be dead. By now, my schedule's wide open." An hour passed. Then, too, the sun descended, painting the sky orange and purple. Elijah didn't move. Finally, exhaustion won. Vera opened the door. He sat against the wall, legs stretched out, questions burning in his eyes. "Come in," she said quietly. "But don't say I didn't warn you." Inside the sparse cabin, Vera wrapped her arms around herself. "What did you do to me?" Elijah asked. She took a breath. She'd never told anyone the full truth.
I was born with something. My grandmother had it too.
She called it the stealing sickness. She met his eyes. "Every man who loves me dies within months." Thomas drowned in knee-deep water. Samuel fell from his horse and broke his neck. Henry stopped breathing in his sleep. The town called me cursed, a black widow. "But that's not what really happened," Elijah said. Vera shook her head. "I absorbed their life force without meaning to, extended my own years while draining theirs. I didn't understand until it was too late." Her voice broke. "By the time I figured it out with Henry, he was already dying." Elijah leaned back, processing. "So what happened today? Why am I not dead?" "That kiss." Vera pressed her hand against her chest where a burning sensation pulsed. "It wasn't healing. It was theft. I pulled death out of you and took it into myself. The bullet wound that should have killed you is inside me now." She lifted her trembling hand. "I can feel it burning right where your wound was." "I've never felt this before. With my husband's, the transfer was gradual over months. But with you, it happened all at once." Elijah stood and crossed to her. He placed his hand over hers, pressing it against her chest. "Here?" Vera nodded. His touch sent a shock through her, and the burning eased slightly. "Then we're connected," Elijah said quietly. "I can feel it too, like a thread between us." He paused. "Show me where it hurts." Against her judgment, Vera unbuttoned the top of her dress, revealing smooth skin. There, over her heart, was a thin white scar that hadn't been there before, exactly where Elijah's bullet wound had been. Elijah pulled open his shirt, revealing an identical scar. "We're sharing it. The wound, the healing, everything." Vera stepped back, buttoning her dress with shaking fingers. "You need to leave before this gets worse. I might start stealing your life like I did with the others. Or maybe it's different this time." He rolled up his sleeve, revealing scars covering his forearm. "Burns, knife wounds, bullet grazes. I've been living on borrowed time for 7 years. Should have died a dozen ways. Maybe I was meant to find you. Maybe we're supposed to balance each other." "That's insane." "So is bringing a dying stranger back to life?" He moved toward the door. "I'm not leaving you to deal with this alone. I'll be back tomorrow morning. We're going to test this connection, understand it." He left before she could argue. Vera stood alone, hand pressed against the scar over her heart, feeling it pulse with her heartbeat. For the first time in 8 years, she wasn't sure if she was more terrified or relieved that she wasn't facing this alone anymore. Elijah returned at dawn, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a determination that made Vera's protests die in her throat. "We're testing this," he said, setting the cups on her table. "Starting now." Over the next 3 days, they discovered the connection ran deeper than either imagined. When Vera accidentally cut her hand chopping wood, Elijah gasped and looked down to find the same wound appearing on his palm. Blood welled up from nowhere, the cut identical in length and depth. They stared at each other in shock. "Does it hurt?" Vera asked, wrapping cloth around her hand. "Same as yours," Elijah replied, doing the same. "I felt the blade, felt everything." The experiments continued. When Elijah's old shoulder injury flared up from years of hard riding, Vera felt phantom pain in the exact same spot. When she developed a headache from lack of sleep, Elijah winced and pressed his fingers to his temple. They were sharing more than wounds. They were sharing sensations, pain, even the small discomforts of daily life. But it wasn't just suffering they shared. On the 3rd morning, Vera laughed at something Elijah said. A genuine laugh she hadn't felt in years. Elijah suddenly smiled, warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with his own emotions. "I felt that," he said, wonder in his voice. "Your happiness." "I felt it like sunshine." Vera's laugh faded. "This is dangerous. If we're this connected, what happens when one of us gets seriously hurt? What happens when one of us dies?" Elijah rolled up both sleeves, revealing the full extent of scars covering his arms. Knife wounds from a fight in Tucson. Bullet grazes from bounty hunters. Burns from an explosion in a mining camp.
I should have died 7 years ago, he said. Been running ever since, surviving things that should have killed me.
Maybe this is why. Maybe I was meant to find you. Or maybe you're going to die because of me, Vera countered. Like all the others. The others didn't have this. He touched the scar over his heart. Whatever happened when you kissed me, it changed the rules. We're not like your husbands. We're balanced somehow, sharing one life between two bodies. That night, Vera tested the theory. She took a needle and pricked her finger, watching as a drop of blood appeared. Within seconds, Elijah's finger started bleeding in the same spot, though no needle had touched him. But then something unexpected happened. The wound on Vera's finger began to heal faster than normal, closing up within minutes. Elijah's did the same. We're healing each other, Vera breathed. The connection goes both ways. Elijah nodded slowly. Your grandmother called it the stealing sickness, but maybe she was wrong. Maybe it was never about stealing. Maybe it was about finding the right person to share it with. My husbands died, Vera reminded him harshly. Because they couldn't handle what you were taking from them. Their bodies couldn't sustain the transfer. Elijah met her eyes. But I'm different. I've been half dead for years, running on nothing but stubbornness and borrowed time. Maybe I needed what you have. Maybe you needed someone strong enough to carry half the burden. Vera wanted to argue, but she couldn't deny what they'd discovered. For the first time since the stealing sickness manifested, she didn't feel like a curse walking among the living. The constant drain she'd felt with her husbands, that slow pull of vitality from them to her, wasn't there with Elijah. Instead, there was balance. Give and take. A rhythm like breathing. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now we figure out how to live with this. Elijah stood, stretching his arms above his head. Across the room, Vera felt the pull in her own muscles, the satisfying release of tension. We're bound together, Vera, for better or worse. Might as well make the best of it. But making the best of it would prove harder than either of them imagined. Because while they were learning about their connection in Vera's isolated cabin, the town of Copper Ridge was having very different conversations. Conversations about witchcraft and curses. Conversations about what should be done with a woman who could steal death itself. And leading those conversations was Mayor Gideon Frost, a man who'd never liked questions he couldn't answer or mysteries he couldn't control. He'd tolerated Vera's presence when she kept to herself, but now she'd performed a miracle in the middle of Main Street, and miracles made people nervous. Nervous people did dangerous things. The reckoning was coming, and neither Vera nor Elijah saw it approaching until it was too late. Word spread through Copper Ridge like wildfire. The widow who killed her husbands had claimed another victim, except this one refused to die. By the fourth day, Mayor Gideon Frost called an emergency town meeting. The hall was packed when Vera and Elijah arrived. Mayor Frost stood at the front, his expression carved from stone. We're here to discuss a matter of public safety, he began. 4 days ago, we witnessed something unnatural. This woman has brought darkness to our town. 3 husbands dead, and now she's worked her magic on another man. I'm standing right here, Elijah called out. Alive and well. That's exactly the problem, Frost replied. You should be dead. Doc Hutchins confirmed it was fatal. Yet here you stand because she did something unnatural. He turned to the crowd. I'm proposing that Vera Ashworth leave Copper Ridge within 1 week. For the safety of this community. The room erupted. Some shouted agreement. Others argued against exile. Vera felt the weight of every eye upon her. This is wrong. Dr. Hutchins stood. Whatever happened wasn't witchcraft. It was something I don't understand, but that doesn't make it evil. Not understanding it is exactly why we should be afraid, Frost replied smoothly. She's demonstrated power over life and death. What happens when she decides to take a life instead of save one? I would never, Vera said quietly. You killed 3 husbands, Frost reminded her coldly. Forgive us if we don't trust your intentions. Elijah stepped between Vera and the mayor. You want someone to blame? Blame me. I'm the one who reached for her. Which makes it worse. She can't control what she does. Frost addressed the crowd. All in favor of exile? Hands rose throughout the room. More than half the town wanted Vera gone. She watched neighbors she'd lived near for years, all voting to cast her out. This isn't justice, Elijah said. This is fear dressed up in Sunday clothes. Call it what you want. The vote stands. 1 week, Mrs. Ashworth. The meeting dissolved into chaos. Vera walked out, unable to breathe. Elijah followed. We'll fight this. But Vera knew better. Fear didn't listen to reason. That night, as she tried to sleep, she heard breaking glass. Fire bloomed in her front room, flames licking up the curtains. Elijah burst through the door, having felt her panic through their connection. He pulled her from the burning cabin, both coughing as smoke filled their lungs. They stood watching her home burn while shadows moved in the darkness. Someone had thrown that torch. Someone wanted her gone permanently. Elijah's arm came around her shoulders, and Vera felt his rage flowing through their bond. We can't stay here, she said quietly. No, Elijah agreed. He looked down at her, his face illuminated by dancing flames. Then we leave, tonight, somewhere they can't find us. Vera nodded, too exhausted to argue. They fled into the darkness together, leaving Copper Ridge behind with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the shared life burning between them. The town had made its judgment, but the real trial was only beginning. The abandoned mining camp sat nestled in the mountains, 3 days' ride from Copper Ridge. Vera and Elijah made it their refuge, cleaning out old cabins and building a life from scraps and determination. The days fell into a rhythm that felt almost peaceful. Vera taught Elijah about herbs and healing, showing him which plants stopped bleeding and which eased pain. He taught her how to shoot, how to track deer through the forest, how to survive like someone who'd spent years running. Their connection deepened in ways neither expected. When Vera felt joy watching sunrise paint the mountains gold, Elijah felt warmth spread through his chest. When Elijah felt fear hearing wolves howl in the distance, Vera's heart raced in response. It's getting stronger, Vera said one morning, bandaging a cut on Elijah's arm. The wound had appeared on her arm first when she'd slipped with a knife, then transferred to him moments later. We're not just sharing sensations anymore. We're sharing everything. Elijah flexed his fingers, watching the matching cut on Vera's arm. Is that a bad thing? I don't know, Vera admitted. Nobody's ever had this before. My grandmother's journals never mentioned anything like it. But their peace shattered when a writer appeared in Copper Ridge asking questions. His name was Silas Cord, a bounty hunter with a reputation for never losing a trail. He wore black leather and carried 2 pistols, his face weathered by years of hunting men across the frontier. He posted a notice in the saloon, a wanted poster with Elijah's face sketched in careful detail. Wanted for the murder of Preston Dalton, the poster read. $1,000 reward. Mayor Frost studied the poster with interest. This man, he said to Silas, he was with the widow, the one who fled town a week ago. Silas's eyes narrowed. Where did they go? Frost smiled, seeing an opportunity to solve 2 problems at once. There's an abandoned mining camp in the mountains, 3 days northeast. She had a cabin there before. Might be where they're hiding. Silas nodded, already planning his approach. He hired 3 guns in town, men willing to ride into the mountains for a share of the bounty. They left at dawn, following the trail Frost provided. Back at the camp, a shopkeeper named Ruth arrived on horseback, her face pale with urgency. She'd always been kind to Vera, one of the few who'd voted against exile. They're coming, she gasped, dismounting quickly. A bounty hunter named Silas Cord. He's tracking Elijah for murder, and the mayor told him where to find you? They left this morning? You have maybe 1 day before they arrive. Elijah's face went white. Vera felt his fear crash through their connection like a wave. Murder? She asked. Some railroad baron's son 7 years ago, Ruth said. That's all I heard. I'm sorry, I have to get back before anyone notices I'm gone. She mounted her horse and rode away, leaving them with impossible choices. Vera turned to Elijah. Is it true? It's complicated. Elijah said quietly. I'll explain everything. But right now, we need to decide. Do we run again, or do we make a stand? Vera looked at the camp they'd built together, the first place she'd felt safe in years. Through their connection, she felt Elijah's exhaustion, his bone-deep tiredness of running. 7 years he'd been fleeing this bounty. 7 years of looking over his shoulder.
If we run, we'll always be running, she said. But if we stay, they might kill us both.
They might, Elijah agreed. He took her hand, and the shared warmth of their connection flowed between them. But at least we'll face it together. And maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to end this that doesn't involve running anymore. Vera squeezed his hand. Through their bond, she felt his determination mixing with her fear, creating something new. Resolve. Then we stay. We prepare. And when Silas Cord arrives, we show him that we're not as easy to kill as he thinks. They had 1 day to get ready for the fight of their lives. As they fortified the camp, Vera finally asked the question burning between them. Tell me about Preston Dalton. Tell me what really happened. Elijah stopped loading his rifle and sat heavily on a wooden crate. 7 years ago, I worked as a surveyor for the railroad, mapping routes through native territories. One day, I found Preston Dalton, the Baron's son, dumping poison into a river. He was killing the water to force indigenous families off their land so the railroad could build through it. Vera sat beside him, feeling his old anger and shame flowing through their connection. What did you do? I confronted him, told him I'd report what he was doing. Elijah's hands clenched. Preston laughed. Said his father owned half the territory, that nobody would believe a surveyor over a Dalton. Then he pulled a gun. We fought for it, struggled on the riverbank. The gun went off, and Preston fell. He was dead before he hit the ground. So, it was self-defense, Vera said. Doesn't matter. The Baron's money bought witnesses who swore I murdered Preston over a gambling debt. I ran because no jury would believe my word against theirs. Elijah looked at her. I've been running ever since, living like a ghost, never staying anywhere long enough to be found. Until you. Vera took his hand. Through their connection, she felt the truth of his words, the weight he'd carried alone for 7 years. Then, an idea struck her. My grandmother's journals mentioned something. The stealing sickness could do more than transfer wounds. In moments of extreme danger, it could share memories, even skills. Elijah turned to her. What are you saying? If I can access your memories of that night, see what you saw, I might be able to find something you missed. Proof of your innocence. Vera pulled out her grandmother's worn journal, flipping to a marked page. There's a ritual here. We press our palms together and fully open the connection between us. I'd be able to see your memories like they were my own. What's the risk? Elijah asked. Vera read further, her expression growing serious. If something goes wrong, we could both die. Or worse, become trapped in a shared consciousness, unable to separate our minds. She looked up. We have hours until Silas arrives. We could run right now, flee deeper into the mountains, and spend the rest of our lives running, Elijah said. Or we could try this, find proof of my innocence. Clear my name. He held out his scarred palm. I trust you, Vera. If anyone can do this, you can. Vera positioned herself across from him, their knees touching. She pressed her palm against his, scar to scar. Focus on that night. Remember everything, every detail. Don't hold anything back. They closed their eyes. Vera spoke the words her grandmother had written, feeling the connection between them open like a floodgate. The world dissolved, and suddenly she was standing beside a river 7 years in the past, seeing through Elijah's eyes. She watched Preston Dalton laugh about poisoned water, felt Elijah's rage and helplessness, witnessed the confrontation, the struggle, the accidental shot. But then she noticed something Elijah hadn't in his panic. Movement in the trees. A young woman, indigenous, watching from the shadows. A witness who saw everything. The memory released them violently. Vera and Elijah collapsed, gasping. Their connection had deepened impossibly. Vera could hear Elijah's thoughts if she focused. feel his emotions without trying. The boundary between them had blurred dangerously.
Did you see her?
Elijah asked breathlessly. The woman in the trees? Yes, Vera said. If we can find her, she can testify to what really happened. She's your proof. She stood on shaky legs. But Silas is almost here. We need to survive the next few hours before we can search for her. Elijah stood beside her, and they moved in unconscious synchronization, their bodies responding to shared instincts. Then we fight, he said, together. Through their connection, Vera felt his determination merge with her own, creating something stronger than either of them alone. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. Silas Cord rode into the mining camp at sunset, 3 hired guns flanking him. His hand rested on his pistol as he surveyed the old buildings, looking for movement. Elijah stepped out from behind a cabin, rifle lowered but ready. Vera emerged beside him, her presence unexpected. Elijah Crane, Silas called out. I'm here for the bounty on your head. Come peacefully, and the woman goes free. Resist, and you both die. There's a third option, Elijah replied. You listen to the truth about Preston Dalton's death. Silas shook his head. Truth doesn't pay. The bounty does. $1,000 says you murdered that man, and I'm not leaving without collecting. Vera stepped forward. Preston Dalton was poisoning a river to force families off their land. Elijah tried to stop him. The gun went off during a struggle. There was a witness who saw everything. Convenient story, Silas said coldly. But I don't get paid for stories. I get paid for delivering wanted men. He nodded to his hired guns. Take him. One of the guns raised his rifle. The shot cracked through the air, and Elijah stumbled backward. But before anyone could react, Vera cried out and grabbed her shoulder. Blood bloomed across her shirt in the exact spot where the bullet had struck Elijah. They both dropped to their knees, bleeding from the same wound. The hired guns froze, staring in disbelief. What in hell? One of them breathed. The bullet had hit Elijah, but both of them were wounded, blood spreading identically across their shoulders. It's witchcraft, another gun whispered, backing his horse away. Some kind of curse. Silas held up his hand, stopping them from fleeing. But even he looked shaken. In 20 years of bounty hunting, he'd never seen anything like this. What are you? He demanded. Bound, Vera gasped through the pain. We share one life. Whatever hurts him hurts me. You want to kill him? You'll have to kill me too. The 2 hired guns who'd spoken exchanged looks. Superstition ran deep in men who lived by the gun. They'd signed up to collect a bounty, not face whatever dark magic connected these 2 people. Without another word, they wheeled their horses and rode away, disappearing into the growing darkness. The 3rd gun remained, but his rifle shook in his hands. Silas glared at him. Hold your position. No, sir, the man said. I don't shoot cursed folk. You want them? You take them yourself. He followed the others, leaving Silas alone with his targets. Silas dismounted slowly, his earlier confidence shaken. He was a businessman, practical and logical, but he couldn't explain what he'd just witnessed. Vera used his hesitation to make her move. Help us find the witness who saw Preston's death, and I guarantee the Dalton family will pay you more than the bounty to keep their son's crimes quiet. How do you figure? Silas asked. Railroad barons don't want scandals, Vera said, pressing her hand against the wound. Through the connection, she felt Elijah doing the same, their shared pain throbbing in rhythm. If it comes out that Preston was poisoning native land, the government might revoke their railroad contracts. They'll pay handsomely to make this go away quietly. Silas studied them, calculating odds and profits. He was a hunter, but he was also smart enough to know when to change tactics. You've got 1 week to find this witness. If you can't prove his innocence by then, I collect my bounty. Deal? Elijah and Vera exchanged glances, having a silent conversation through their connection. Finally, Elijah nodded. Deal. But you help us. We need your tracking skills to find her. Silas holstered his gun. Fine. But if you're lying to me, if this witness doesn't exist, I'll hunt you both to the ends of the earth. He moved toward them. Now let me see that wound, before you both bleed out." He bandaged their shoulders, still shaking his head at the identical injuries. As he worked, Vera and Elijah sat close together, their shared life burning between them like a candle in the darkness. They'd survived the first test, but the real challenge was just beginning. With Silas's tracking skills, they found the settlement 2 days' ride from Copper Ridge. It sat tucked in a valley, a small community of families who'd been displaced by railroad expansion. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and children played near modest homes built from whatever materials they could gather. "She's here," Elijah said, feeling certainty through his shared memories with Vera. Naomi Redfeather. That was her name. An elder approached as they rode in, his weathered face cautious but not hostile. Silas stayed back with the horses while Vera and Elijah dismounted. "We're looking for Naomi." "Redfeather," Elijah said respectfully. "We mean her no harm. She witnessed something 7 years ago that could save my life." The elder studied them for a long moment, then called out in his language. A woman emerged from one of the homes, perhaps 30 years old, with intelligent eyes and careful movements. She froze when she saw Elijah. "I remember you," Naomi said quietly. "You were at the river, the day the railroad man died." "You saw what happened," Elijah said. "You saw the truth." Naomi's eyes moved to Vera, and something shifted in her expression. She stepped closer, noticing how they stood together, the way their movements synchronized without thought. "You're bound," she said with recognition. "Soul bond. My grandmother told stories of such things, rare and sacred." Vera's hand unconsciously moved to her shoulder, where the shared wound still ached. "You know about this. Our people have stories about bonds like yours. 2 souls sharing one life force, balanced between 2 bodies." Naomi's gaze softened. "It's a blessing, not a curse, though it must feel heavy sometimes." "Will you help us?" Vera asked. "Will you testify to what you saw that day?" Naomi looked away, fear crossing her face. "I've been hiding for 7 years, terrified the railroad family would find me and silence me if they knew I existed. Coming forward means risking everything." "I know," Elijah said. "And I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. But I'm tired of running, tired of living like a ghost. If you testify, we can expose what Preston Dalton did. Stop the railroad from poisoning more land." Naomi was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. "I'm tired of hiding too. Tired of keeping silent while injustice stands." She straightened her shoulders. "I'll testify. Not just for you, but for the families Preston Dalton harmed. For the truth." Relief flooded through Elijah, so strong that Vera felt it crash through their connection like a wave. "Thank you," he breathed. They rode back toward Copper Ridge together, a strange group bound by an even stranger purpose. Silas rode ahead, already calculating how to leverage this information with the Dalton family. Naomi rode between Vera and Elijah, her courage growing with each mile. When they reached Copper Ridge, Mayor Frost tried to block them from speaking. He stood on the steps of the town hall, flanked by men he'd paid to keep order. "This woman has no credibility. She's lying to protect a murderer." But Dr. Hutchins stepped forward, the same man who'd witnessed Elijah's impossible healing. "Let her speak. We've already seen one miracle. Maybe it's time we listen to the truth." Others joined him. Ruth, the shopkeeper who'd warned them, a rancher who'd lost land to railroad expansion. One by one, people found courage they didn't know they had. The town meeting that followed was chaos. Naomi testified to everything she'd witnessed. Preston dumping poison into the river, his threats against Elijah, the struggle that ended with an accidental death. Her words were clear and unwavering, backed by details only a true witness would know. Mayor Frost tried to maintain control, but the truth was too powerful. When word reached the Dalton family, they moved quickly to contain the scandal. Through Silas, they offered reparations to the affected families and quietly withdrew Elijah's bounty. They couldn't risk the publicity of a trial that would expose Preston's crimes. As the sun set over Copper Ridge, Elijah stood in the town square, Finally free. The wanted poster that had haunted him for 7 years was torn down, his name cleared. Vera stood beside him, their hands intertwined, their shared life burning steady and strong between them. With Elijah's name cleared and the truth exposed, they returned to the mining camp. The town had witnessed everything, seen Naomi's testimony, watched the Dalton family scramble to contain their scandal. Vera was no longer the cursed widow. She was the woman who'd saved a dying man and stood by him through impossible odds. But now they faced their final choice. Vera pulled out her grandmother's journal, opening it to a page she'd marked weeks ago. "There's a ritual here," she said quietly. "One that could sever our connection. We'd go back to being separate people. No more shared wounds, no more feeling each other's emotions. We'd be free of each other." Elijah sat across from her in their rebuilt cabin, the fire crackling between them. "Is that what you want?" Vera traced the words on the page. "For 8 years, I was terrified of my curse. I isolated myself, watched 3 men die because of what I carried. I thought I was poison, something that destroyed everything it touched." She looked up at him. "But these past weeks with you, sharing this life, have been the first time I've felt whole. The curse wasn't the stealing sickness, it was being alone with it. My husbands couldn't handle what I was," she continued. "Their bodies couldn't sustain the transfer, the constant drain. But you're different. You needed what I have as much as I needed someone strong enough to share it with." Elijah reached across and took her hand. Through their connection, she felt his thoughts as clearly as her own. "I spent 7 years running," he said. "Never trusting anyone, never staying long enough to build anything real. Always looking over my shoulder, waiting for the bullet that would finally catch up to me. I was half dead long before that gun went off in the saloon. This connection gave me something worth staying for," he said. "Someone worth protecting. A life worth living instead of just surviving." He squeezed her hand. "I don't want to be free of you, Vera. I want to stay bound. Share every wound, every joy, every moment we have left." Vera felt tears slide down her cheeks. Through their bond, she felt Elijah's emotion mixing with hers, creating something bigger than either of them alone. Love, fierce and unbreakable, tempered by fire and blood and impossible choices. She closed the journal and stood, walking to the fireplace. Without hesitation, she threw the book into the flames. The pages caught quickly, curling and blackening as the ritual instructions burned away. "No more running," she said. "No more hiding. We stay bound." Elijah stood beside her, watching the journal turn to ash. "Together, together," Vera agreed. They spent the next few days preparing to leave Copper Ridge permanently. The town had accepted the truth, but too much had happened for them to stay. Too many painful memories, too much fear that still lingered in some people's eyes. They needed a fresh start somewhere the past couldn't reach them. Silas stopped by before they left, his saddlebags heavy with payment from the Dalton family. "You were right," he said. "They paid triple the bounty to keep this quiet. I'm retiring, buying a ranch in California." He tipped his hat to them. "You two are the strangest thing I've encountered in 20 years of hunting, but you're also the luckiest. Not many people find what you have." Ruth brought them supplies for the journey, hugging Vera tightly. "You deserved better from this town," she said. "I hope you find peace wherever you go." Dr. Hutchins examined their shared scar one last time, shaking his head in wonder. "Medical science can't explain you," he said. "But maybe some things aren't meant to be explained. Maybe some things are just meant to be accepted." On their last morning in camp, Vera woke to find Elijah already dressed, packing their few belongings. She felt the phantom ache in her shoulder where the bullet wound had been, and knew he felt it too. It would probably always be there, a reminder of the day they became bound. "Ready?" Elijah asked, holding out his hand. Vera took it, feeling their shared life pulse between them. Ready. They rode out as the sun rose, heading west toward new territory. Behind them, Copper Ridge grew smaller until it disappeared completely. Ahead, the future stretched out uncertain but full of possibility. They had each other, and that was enough. They rode for 3 weeks, following trails that led away from everything they'd known, past desert valleys and through mountain passes, across rivers that sparkled in the afternoon sunday. They moved as one, their horses keeping pace side by side, their bodies swaying in rhythm to shared instincts they no longer questioned. In a small town called Redemption Springs, nestled against the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, they finally stopped. It was far enough from Copper Ridge that nobody knew their story, small enough that strangers weren't automatically suspicious. The locals welcomed them with cautious warmth, and they found work quickly. Elijah hired on at a ranch, breaking horses and mending fences. Vera opened a small healing practice, using her grandmother's knowledge to help people with ailments the local doctor couldn't cure. Their cabin sat on the edge of town, simple but sturdy. At night, they'd sit on the porch and watch stars emerge across the darkening sky. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, their connection humming between them like a song only they could hear. One evening, Vera cut her hand while preparing dinner. The wound appeared instantly on Elijah's palm across the room. He looked up from the saddle he was repairing and smiled.
Still getting used to that. Will we ever?
Vera asked, wrapping cloth around both their hands.
Probably not,
Elijah admitted.
but I wouldn't change it.
Neither would she. The shared wounds had become part of their language, a constant reminder that they carried each other's pain and joy equally. When Elijah's back ached from ranch work, Vera felt it and prepared poultices that helped them both. When Vera felt anxiety about a difficult patient, Elijah's calm presence through their bond steadied her. They discovered new aspects of their connection constantly. When Elijah learned a new skill, Vera found she could do it too, as if his muscle memory transferred through their bond. When Vera read medical texts, Elijah absorbed the knowledge without opening a book. They were becoming more than two people bound together. They were becoming something entirely new. The townspeople noticed their strange synchronicity but said nothing. In Redemption Springs, people came to escape their pasts, and asking too many questions was considered impolite. They were simply known as the couple who moved as one, who never spent a day apart, who seemed to share thoughts without speaking. 6 months after they arrived, a traveling preacher came through town. He married them properly in a small ceremony, attended by their new neighbors. When Elijah kissed Vera at the altar, she felt the same electricity as that first impossible kiss in Copper Ridge. But this time, there was no fear, no death hovering nearby. Just life, abundant and shared and whole. That night, lying together in their cabin, Vera traced the scar over Elijah's heart. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Being bound to me?" Elijah covered her hand with his. Through their connection, she felt his answer before he spoke it. "Every day I wake up feeling you beside me, even when you're across the room. Every wound we share reminds me I'm not alone. Every joy doubles because you feel it too." He turned to face her. "Regret? Never. This is the first time I've truly been alive." Vera smiled, tears gathering in her eyes. For 8 years, she'd believed her curse would destroy anyone who loved her. But Elijah hadn't been destroyed. He'd been completed the same way she had. They weren't two broken pieces forced together. They were two halves of something that had always been meant to exist as one. The scar on her chest pulsed gently, matching rhythm with Elijah's heartbeat. It no longer burned with pain. Now it felt warm, like a second heart beating in time with her own. The stealing sickness her grandmother had feared was actually a gift, waiting for the right person to share it with. They built a life in Redemption Springs that stretched into years. They faced hardships together, feeling each illness and injury as one. They celebrated victories together, their shared joy multiplying until it overflowed. And they grew old together, their bodies aging in perfect synchronization, neither one pulling ahead or falling behind. The town came to see them as a living legend, the couple whose love transcended normal bounds, who proved that curses could become blessings when met with the right heart. And when travelers asked about the matching scars over their hearts, Vera and Elijah would smile and say nothing, keeping their impossible secret close, because some bonds weren't meant to be explained. They were meant to be lived, day by day, heartbeat by heartbeat. Two souls sharing one endless life until the very end. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Because tomorrow, we have another incredible story that will leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens when a stranger's kindness changes everything in ways nobody expected.